War has changed. And that's why gameranx is bringing you the top 10 new war games of 2015. Before we get into it, I want to give you a quick little clarification. We mean games where you wage war, not like little segments of a war like Rainbow Six, like a full war. Number 10, Blitzkrieg 3. If you're into World War II based real-time strategy games, you are gonna love Blitzkrieg 3. It was first announced in 2013 when they dropped its first trailer and got everybody excited with a pretty cool concept. Blitzkrieg 3 will take you from the Poland invasion in September 1939 up to the fall of Berlin in May 1945 as either the Axis, the Western Allies, or the USSR, which if you're into history and perspective, that's gotta be exciting for you. Seriously. Give this one a shot, it's a fun game. Number 9, Armored Warfare. It is a shooter that uses the Cry engine and has a variety of player versus player matches as well as player versus environment. The thing you have to know about this game is that it all takes place in armored vehicles. But this can be such a fun genre when it's done right, I have to recommend you play it. Number 8, Running with Rifles is a top-down open world tactical shooter game. Essentially, if you're playing the multiplayer game, Running with Rifles is batshit. The war basically never stops. As long as there's people playing, there's a war going on the map. There are quite a few different game modes that include everything from death matches to invasions to something called Teddy Hunt, which is essentially capture the flag. The game's been in development since 2011 and it shows it is a refined and very, very fun game. Number 7, Company of Heroes 2 The British Force. Now the thing that's interesting about this is it is an expansion, but it's standalone, meaning you can buy this on its own and play it on its own. On top of that, it segments into the regular game. Now the main difference here is that the British forces are a little bit more complex than the other factions in the game. Most certainly the British in the British forces are indeed defense oriented, but are now a lot more flexible. When you play this game, you're going to have to learn about your faction in and out and develop a strategy that can work with it, because it's a very specific faction that has a lot of unique units. Overall, Company of Heroes 2 The British Forces is a really interesting strategy game on its own, and as an expansion pack, it's great. Number 6, Verdun calls itself the first multiplayer first-person shooter set in a realistic First World War setting. If you head over to the Verdun page over on Steam, you'll find that it has an incredibly positive rating. People love this game, and when I say people, I mean a lot. The game features completely historically accurate equipment, and that means all the way from weapons to uniforms, and the maps are also based on real battlefields on the Western Front. Now this game has some really interesting game modes, from deathmatch all the way to the Frontlines game mode, which actually has a turn-based aspect to it, which is really strange considering this is a first-person shooter. But that kind of experimentation is really welcome. The game's built on Unity, but for Unity it's a gorgeous game. I mean, if I didn't tell you it was built on Unity, you wouldn't know. It's worth your time, give it a shot. Literally. Number 5, Wolfenstein The Old Blood. Now if you liked Wolfenstein The New Order, you're going to like Wolfenstein The Old Blood. It's a prequel to The New Order and takes a slightly more B-movie style perspective on the rebooted Wolfenstein franchise. Now this is essentially a standalone expansion pack, so it's not quite as long, but a lot of people have actually called that good, as some of the New Order missions were stretched out a little bit longer than they maybe needed to have been. It is absolutely a Wolfenstein game, and it is a ton of fun that you will not feel as though you wasted your time on, so try it. Number 4, Active Aggression. Set in the near future, there's a massive crash that essentially collapses the entire Chinese financial system. I don't know if you know this, but the Chinese financial system's pretty important. So that basically collapses the world economy and everyone's gone crazy. And that is your motivation in this real-time strategy game. Now that you know that your work is cut out for you, let me tell you this. The game plays a little bit similar to Command & Conquer, so if you're a fan of that series, you'll probably enjoy this. That being said, this feels just a little bit more stylized than Command & Conquer. In my opinion, it's just got the kind of pizzazz that's really needed in this kind of game that a lot of other entries to the genre are lacking entirely. Plus, it's super fun. Number 3, Call of Duty Black Ops 3 is pretty obviously a Call of Duty game. And as such, you get a single-player game, a multiplayer game, as well as a zombie single-player game and a zombie multiplayer game. Black Ops 3 actually takes place in a dystopian future set in 2065, which is 40 years after Black Ops 2. Number 2, this year the Xbox One has a pretty cool tank game that has a pretty obvious name. World of Tanks is a massively multiplayer online game with a focus on player versus player and highlights itself as an esports game. Now it will have a version on the PlayStation 4 next year, but for now I would say don't wait. If you have an Xbox One, play it. The customization options are pretty sweet in this game and include both performance and visual aspects. And being this whole thing is about PvP, this game can get insane. It's free, so just give it a shot already. And finally, number 1, you can't have a war game list and not include Metal Gear Solid 5: The Phantom Pain. The Phantom Pain is basically looked at as Hideo Kojima's masterpiece because it plays so fun that even the fact that his story got cut off by an entire chapter or two, people still think that the whole thing is amazing. The gameplay in this is so varied, you can do basically whatever you want. And on top of that, so many of the goals are so ridiculous in their silliness, in a way that is so enjoyable, it's acceptable that it's just weird. The game has an incredible single-player campaign, but the multiplayer itself is beyond enjoyable. I mean, really, there isn't enough positive that can be said about the Phantom Pain. Now, I'm not saying there is nothing wrong with it at all. There are little flaws, but the keyword there is little. Very little. It's really just an incredible game and is the definition of what gaming should be. It's so detailed and wonderful. Passing on Metal Gear Solid 5: The Phantom Pain is just dumb. Now, if you've played any of these or are just excited to, please leave us a comment and tell us exactly what you're thinking. Also, don't forget to click the like button, it helps us so much you would not believe it. If you aren't subscribed, now would be a great time to do so because we upload new videos every single day of the week. The best way to see them first is a subscription to our channel. Thank you so much for watching this video, and as always, we will see you next time right here on gameranx.